Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome back to 2023. And it's a new episode of Wamen Hour, the first of the year. And I'm joined by my little birdie. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Good evening. Happy New Year. It's a good start to the year.
A wonderful start to the year. It's been a wonderful break, and I really enjoyed. I dropped everything as soon as the Christmas period began. I didn't think about any kind of YouTube or work, any projects. Just dropped everything to spend some time with my family, and I hope that you, Birdie, and everyone watching it was able to get a little bit of time to themselves in a similar manner.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a bit weird actually trying to get back into the swing of things this week specifically, but we're getting there slowly. Hopefully next week there'll be a bit more of a routine because that's completely gone out the window.
I remember this time last year, you shared that meme of how it feels to be just after Christmas, where you're full of cheese and unsure of what day of the week it is.
Yeah. That was basically last week, beginning of this week. I'm still confused as to what day of the week it is. I've no idea.
It's even more confusing when you get the days that fall on the weekend, so that you then get a bank holiday in lieu. Like several days later, you're having a Boxing Day bank holiday several days after Boxing Day's already happened. That kind of thing. Just a crazy time of year where everything just sort of stops. One of my New Year's resolutions, for anyone who follows me on Twitter, will know that I'm going to aspire to read every super chat this year. Every super chat that I'm sent, I'm going to be reading in the stream that it's sent. I'm not going to miss any, because I know that the people who sent them, they want them to be read, usually on air, and I'm not very I haven't been great about reading them in the past, and I those people who sent super chats that have not been read, I see you. I feel bad when I realise that I've missed you, and no longer will it happen. It's that those days will be behind us, and with that in mind, I'll have to briefly introduce our topic, otherwise these super chats aren't going to make any sense. But I had a random kind of thought that I just wanted to explore. This wasn't a topic that was really requested, but I wanted to talk about using the words sort of satanic and demonic in a modern sense, and what does it mean when people these days in the modern era describe something as either satanic or demonic, and to really understand what people mean when they say it and what people understand by the word. I think we really have to go into a long history of religious belief and what people have actually thought about these ideas for going back a long way. So we won't be just talking about the Satanic Panic of the 80s, but it's a very catchy kind of term because it rhymes and because everyone's heard the Satanic Panic. So I thought it would make a good title for for this stream. I did look into it today. I've been doing a little bit of research about the Satanic Panic of the 80s, mainly in America, to be a bit more knowledgeable about it. So that's one of the things we'll talk about. And with that in mind, I'll read this very first super chat of the year. Thanks very much to Matty Ice for $20. There were real elements of the Satanic Panic. One of the gotchas was McMartin Preschool not having a basement where kids say they were abused. In the FBI Finders dump, there's a report of McMartin's tunnels. Look at Finders case, 1987. For people who aren't familiar with the Satanic Panic, that might not make a lot of sense, but I guess I can, if there's time. Birdie, how much do you know about the Satanic Panic and any of the terms used in this super chat?
I don't know an awful lot, I have to admit, and I did not do my research earlier, so I'm already in bad books.
No, that's fine. I didn't request for any of the guests to research the Satanic Panic, but
drop them at the deep end. I've obviously heard of it. I am aware of roughly what it is, but yeah, I can't say I know enough to comment on this particular super chat, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, this particular super chat, one of the major cases of Satanic Panic that are sort of kicked it off, or that became at the height of the panic of the 80s, was this preschool, McMartin preschool, that run by this man and a woman, and they were this. I think they were a husband and wife couple. These two people were accused of having satanic rituals in which multiple students at the preschool were, without going into graphic detail because we're already at the sort of the start of the stream, but were the victims of rather, satanic rituals, basically. So there was this particular kinds of abuse that were sort of characterized by actually being part of a satanic ritual, things like consuming of bodily fluids and blood, and really like graphic stuff. And these two people were actually put in prison. I think these were the only people who were actually convicted of this crime that apparently happened. And these days, I believe this couple is believed to be innocent, and it was all just a case of basically a witch trial where the parents and the police were sort of coaching the children. They were sort of encouraging them to come forward with what they thought was a genuine accusation. But it was all this sort of result of this very new idea of post-traumatic stress disorder and repressed memories, where the children never reported their teachers or these adults. But the parents would keep asking and asking about it, or the police would keep encouraging them to say things, and children with who were sort of eager to please the authority figures in their life and with a sort of overactive imagination would say things they later denied. And in the end, there were like thousands of cases, not just this preschool, but all across America, where there were accusations made against specific adults for the abuse of children that they couldn't find any evidence of any of it. So who knows exactly how many of these accusations were genuine? Presumably, just by the numbers and the fact that this kind of abuse in some form does actually take place, even if it's not literally a satanic ritual with the drinking of blood. You can't say that it's all fake. You just don't know. But presumably it was massively inflated. And sorry, I just add cows to the stream. Welcome, cows.
Hello.
How much do you are you familiar with the satanic panic of? It's more of an American phenomenon. So.
Yeah. I will probably be in the mental state to talk about that in like 2 seconds.
Fair enough. I'm going to continue. I was sort of mid-flow, but I really wanted to add you into the conversation.
It's okay.
Welcome to the stream. What I think is really notable about the satanic panic that I think we can't really get on board with today. Like, it's hard for us to even imagine how basically a Christian movement, these sort of fundamentalist Christians that had this idea that it was something satanic was going on, and that these Satanists were like performing rituals to honor their like demons, and that it was all some kind of twisted cult of child abusers. The fact that this idea was actually it was propagated by the mainstream media on the TV. It was telling parents to look out for signs of this kind of abuse, and it was sort of reporting this as a respectable story. That is something that we these days we take for granted, that the media is just completely full of lies, and that people actually do believe it. But in the 80s, it was almost like flipped on its head, where the lies that the media were feeding everyone was about this satanic cult of ritual abuse. It's just kind of crazy. So I think reading about it is interesting, and it is sort of a more recent, much more recent than it even. It sounds like that, something that's like this level of like superstition and like going witch trials and things, it seems like something from a bygone era. But the 80s really weren't that long ago, and it's in living memory for a lot of people, which is why it remains a very controversial subject. I think because the people who lived through it are still adamant that they were doing the right thing and that there really was something going on. As far as I can tell, who knows? But as this super chat has suggested, the two people who were convicted of child abuse, even if they weren't actual Satanists or they weren't performing rituals, it's possible that they were convicted of an actual crime that really did take place, even if it was exaggerated or twisted by the imaginations of the children or by the parents. I really just don't trust any of the sources I've been reading about this or hearing about, because I know how easy it is to twist these stories. A lot of these people who were later exonerated, or this couple have been released. They've been exonerated in some sense. They're not in prison anymore, but for all I know, it was only an exaggeration of something that really was happening, and that they actually could have been guilty of something. Not that I could say either way. It's just it's such a muddy situation. You really can't say. I wouldn't feel confident saying either way.
In terms of the people kind of believing the story and adding to it, and as we know, when something's released on the media, the amount of people who will just believe it's true because they saw it on the telly is ridiculous. And it kind of reminds me of when War of the Worlds was released, when it was read. Obviously it's a book, it's a novel initially, but it was read on the radio, and people genuinely believed that it was true because it was such a great broadcast that people thought that these things were attacking Earth and it was all going downhill. So it reminds me of that same situation. If you broadcast something well enough, people will believe you, even if they haven't got the facts straight, or like you say, Poe, there could have been something else going on. Cows, are you falling asleep? Was that?
Yeah, that was the alarm that was supposed to wake me up to be here on time, which clearly did not go off on time.
Hit snooze for too many times tonight.
Yes, it just reminds me of that situation. If you do broadcast something well enough, you can add to it. You can say basically what you like, and people will believe it, even if it's word of mouth. It will just go on and on and on.
Well, I will invite viewers to insert their own examples of more recent moral panics that have taken place. I won't say it's just from what we'd call the left, but from any Me Too era. It's not to say that these things didn't happen, but there's a kind of frenzy of stories that are all collected. They're all regarding the same thing, that make it seem like there's an epidemic of this one particular kind of thing, because one story begets another, and these things just get dug up and found, and they're all paraded around as one big list of can you believe this is a really common problem that's happening a lot.
My mind is just going to not taking the funny shot equals baby killer. So yeah.
Don't have to go back that far in memory to find examples.
I was gonna say, I was just taking a quick scroll through the Satanic Panic Wikipedia, and I was gonna say I like the comparison it made to sort of McCarthyism, because sort of what you were saying, Bertie, that this whole media thing, especially in that era, where television was still, I don't want to say relatively new, but it was still something that it was just the best of the best, and people woke up with their favorite news stations, their reporters, and why would they have any reason to lie to the American public? I don't know, maybe for ratings. But that was a sort of time where this sort of thing had never really been studied. The impact of spreading ideas like this through the means of mass American media. So yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Poe.
Oh, not at all. I just as I was telling the viewers before you joined, my New Year's resolution is to read every super chat. So I'm being super focused on making sure we definitely get to these in a timely manner, especially before the show ends. The show will go on for as long as there are super chats to read. That's the new resolution.
That could be dangerous, though.
For €5 from Iberian Perspective, he is referencing the thumbnail image Fire Dance from 1889, saying that he was, I say he or she was admiring this piece before happening to see it in the thumbnail. It's the Baader Meinhof effect. I'd caution to suggest the effect of when you first find out about something, you start to see it everywhere. Well, I found this image just on Google, so I'm actually not familiar with the artist or the painting, but who knows? Maybe it's much more famous than I thought it was. But I really liked it, and it kind of evoked the witchy nature of Women Hour. We've in the start of the show we used to play with the witch motif a lot with our daily witch burnings, our weekly witch burnings.
Oh yes.
Yes. If I can just interject, Poe, there's been a comment which completely sums up what we were just on about with the radio, and it's from Sabine Wren 21. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it says Wartime Generation Trust, and that just sums it up to me.
Yeah.
Is that one generation of exactly that completely sums it up. I just wanted to point that one out.
We've got another super chat from DRT, which brings us nicely on to the next point I wanted to make. For $5, thank you very much. Dungeons and Dragons is Satan's game. Having only learned about it well after I've only heard about it from the tabletop RPG perspective. Enjoy your Happy New Year, DRT. Thank you for your super chats, and they will all be read this year. Actually, DRT, it was your super chat that made me want to talk about Satanism. Weirdly, it's a kind of strange mind that I have of fireworks going off that set off other random fireworks. But last year, our last super chat topic that we never got to was, I believe, from DRT asking us to talk about non-human women being sexualized in video games and anime and cartoons. These women who are either aliens or animals, or I think he mentioned specifically Tali from Mass Effect. So I'm glad you're here, Cows. And
that wasn't a dig at me at all.
I think these characters are designed, and people get crushes on these female characters. It's completely unrealistic to expect that an alien species would have anything similar to what we consider to be a sexy woman, like a sexy female alien who is just it's completely ridiculous. It's just
take the Star Trek lore that we littered the human DNA or whatever it was.
Yeah. That does make sense, at least to some degree. But the fact that humans, I don't want to say most humans don't find animals of our own planet even remotely sort of don't resemble human females at all. Anyway, that's I started to think about how I do enjoy this many of these art pieces, video games and media. I love Star Trek. Many attractive female aliens in Star Trek, for instance, because they're just they're humans in makeup. Obviously they're attractive. If you get a beautiful woman and you dress her up as an alien in Star Trek, she's still going to be a beautiful woman. And then you get these things like Mass Effect where they're CG, so you could just make them whatever shape you want, but they still make them look like sexy women. And Tali is wearing a mask and a breathing thing. It's a cool character design, but her shape is very much like a sexual woman. She's 20-something woman with a hot body.
I think one of Kim Kardashian's Met outfits was compared to her. The sort of no face, all curve sort of thing.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, we've done 2 episodes about the Met Gala
Yeah.
dresses now, haven't we, on Wamen Hour? So that's
I'm
that's
pretty
a
sure
callback.
that one was on there because there was a bit of a joke that she had a full face of makeup on underneath that hooded
Yeah.
mask that you couldn't see her face anyway. But she
Right.
posted a photo of her getting her makeup done, and everyone was like, "Why? Because you can't see your face, so it's absolutely pointless."
One thinking about this issue, this topic, I should say. Somehow the word satanic just kind of floated to my brain, like this. The fact that these characters are they're simultaneously like human, they're humanized, but they're like a corruption of God's creation. To put it into religious terms, like hardcore viewers of my channel and of Wamen Owl might be still be a bit confused about the degree to which I believe in God and engage in Christianity. But lately, I've been, even though I don't have any what you might call supernatural beliefs, I don't at the moment believe in the resurrection of the true actual resurrection of Christ. I think it's a story kind of like Noah's Ark. Anyway, the point is, I still find it useful to like reach for these religious terms sometimes. I don't really understand that, but religion has a way of explaining things that we have difficulty describing in purely rational, black and white scientific terms. And this word satanic is one that I find myself like reaching for without really knowing why. When it's not just like thing that is bad that I don't like. Sometimes it's something I do like, like sexy alien characters in anime or in Star Trek. And I'm like, okay, well, I kind of like these characters, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong that I can point to about being interested in these characters. But it does kind of seem satanic to me, like a little bit.
I was gonna say that sort of in that era, calling something satanic was just, like us calling something paused. It was just sort of a word because, I mean, not to discredit the whole like religious connection, because I'm sure in many cases there was, but religion was very, very much so a more ingrained part of everyday society. In that time that word was sort of popularized, and I feel like looking back at some of the articles that things are deemed satanic, strange sort of obscure things that I don't know, like sort of separate from the norm are commonly described as such, like sexy alien women and abusing children, I guess. But I was just saying, like, satanic, I think, it's sort of a word that is a relic of its time that still definitely has proper usage, but I feel like it was used a bit differently back then.
Yeah, to bring it back to Dungeons and Dragons, which I think is what it's often remembered for now. I don't know if any of you have seen any clips from. It was one of Tom Hanks's very first roles, was playing a teenager in this like Christian movie that got made to try and make Dungeons and Dragons look evil. Not that it was like a satanic ritual, but that it was making kids lose touch with reality. And Tom Hanks he thinks that he gets confused and starts to like think that he's becoming his D&D character. It's all very like stupid and cheesy, and it's all very corny. Kind of funny to watch clips from it, especially knowing that Tom Hanks goes on to be like a really famous actor. Like he's a good actor even in this. But I don't think of D&D as satanic, but or heavy metal music was another one that people were kind of worried about their kids getting into. They were calling that satanic. And I think, kind of. I don't think that people who like metal music are literally devil worshippers, or that it necessarily says anything about their morals. But I think the music itself, it's really going for that aesthetic, at least. Like, you can say that they're intentionally trying to appear sort of dark and evil to put it bluntly, that like that's not accidental. Like they know what they're doing when they like wear spikes and they use scary black makeup and they're not trying to look like like church going nice boys.
But it's a statement, Poe. Come on, man.
I mean, it's fine. Like
it's just a phase.
The thing is, all of this stuff, like D&D and heavy metal, it's all like that's all fine. It's like it's not there's anything wrong with it. Like for most people, that's what I keep coming back to thinking about this topic. Like for most, like for a healthy, like well-adjusted, well-socialized person, you can dabble in pretty much anything and it won't actually have a negative effect on you. Like you can consume as much anime and a D&D as you want to. You're probably just going to have a good time with it, and you might make friends, and it may be a positive influence in your life. But in these edge cases, you do get. I look at these things like furries and like these extremely online, very like disturbed individuals who get way too far into these like internet fandoms. And back in the day, it was probably it can be anything, but these products that people get way too obsessed with, like for a diseased mind, they're like fanning the flames. Like it's like throwing fuel on a fire. It's like drug use. Like most people can use weed without experiencing much of a negative side effect, but for some people it can ruin their lives. And that's not to say that these things are literally satanic or that they should be banned, but it just made me wonder about so much of how we talk about morality and what things should and should not be consumed, or how we should talk about such and such, how these things should be viewed. I think I can kind of see where people are coming from with, calling these things satanic, or like being concerned that their kids are getting too much into this stuff.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, sorry. Alex decided she wanted a book off the bookshelf, so I had to go on.
No problem.
To completely add to the whole use of the word satanic, I think it's the same as a lot of words we use now. The whole meaning of it has just been thrown out the window. It's been misused over the years, and it gets used for very minor things, I think, now. So, if you see someone wearing eyeliner, that's satanic, when actually, no, it's just makeup. Calm down. But in terms of things being misused, I think with, as you were saying earlier, Poe, with certain types of music, as you can say, you can dabble in it, but it's when it becomes an obsession, it's very obsessive. And I think that in terms of what would be called satanic music, so any heavy metal rock music, or would be classed as emo music, obviously they do talk about death and things like that quite a lot, and that's not something that a lot of people would consider to be a healthy topic. So I think anything for the use of satanic is a case of anything relating to Satan, rituals, or even death. So anything that's not what would be considered as pure or healthy to have in your life, people are just throwing the word satanic at it.
Yeah, I think it's hard for modern people to kind of get on board with, to properly understand. I'm not claiming that I understand, but when I read books from a sort of pre-industrial era, or like stories about that time when death was very much closer in people's lives than it is now, we can't really, I don't think we can really empathize with just how close a lot of people were. Anyone that even if they're healthy, could just get, they could catch a disease, or they could get an infection, and they could just be weeks from death at any point. It's not, obviously that does happen to modern people if they are, get suddenly a cancer diagnosis or something. But that kind of, my understanding is that sort of thing happened a lot. I mean, even, I won't go there. But, there's like no happy moment in anyone's life could be fully appreciated without there being a sort of shadow of death over everything. And for people like that, I could understand how superstition it could find its way into, not even wanting to mention death, and the way that people used to be very careful about even saying the word hell. It's like a very these days I think about how when I was a child I was told not to say hell, like it was a swear word.
Yeah.
Which these days is like really minor. Or even saying the word bloody is kind of a swear word in English. Even evoking these bad words was somehow like calling bad luck upon yourself, or to evoke like horrible imagery. It's very easy for us where most of the time death is like something we just read about in books and we watch on TV and see in films, where we're kind of just used to it because it's relatively benign, I think, for modern people. But in a time when you or anyone could just die, I think people were much more sensitive about even talking about death and hell, anything of that nature. I think that it's easy to just say like, oh, people used to be superstitious because they didn't know about science, and that obviously that is true a bit, but I think it's on a psychological level there's something more sort of deeper going on.
In relation to your previous comment, Pat, in terms of the D&D comment as well, I think a lot of people call things like that satanic, or even aliens and things like that satanic, because it's not necessarily human, if you know what I mean. So it's not of this earth. It's a hybrid, or it's inhuman. It's Satan itself, because Satan himself isn't necessarily a human. He's a hybrid. So in terms of people seeing that, they instantly relate it to being satanic, because there is that connection there.
I think I get what you mean. Yeah, I think that going into a really sort of psychologizing perspective, sort of what Jordan Peterson might say, the human like concept of evil, I think the human imagination naturally tends towards embodying it with sort of this dark imagery when confronted with something really horrible that's like hard to properly comprehend. Like I'm sure that everyone has heard of acts that you just can't comprehend how a conscious feeling human being could do something that horrible. And this kind of abuse that they were scared of back in the height of the Satanic Panic, that the idea that you could that a human was capable of doing that, like a human like me, you might think that would be impossible, and you'd want to have like an explanation for how a person who everyone does like self-serving crimes, right? They'll do bad things that somehow benefits them, stealing and lying. These are things that are bad, that we understand why people do them. And then there's bad things that are just completely incomprehensible, that you think like this person's just possessed by some kind of evil. That's the sort of religious way of putting it, but there's almost like we don't even have a good language for how to describe that behavior with scientific terms. This person's just twisted, they're very disturbed, they've got like
I find it interesting that we instantly say that they're evil. We won't necessarily say that it's satanic. We'll say, oh no, that person is just truly evil. We won't say it's got anything to do with Satan.
Yeah, I mean, evil, pretty much, what are you saying? The word evil is pretty much, it's the same thing, except that we understand evil in the modern world.
I think that's it. We do understand the word evil more than satanic. I think when people think of satanic, they think of rituals. But if someone's done something, if a criminal has done something that the only word to describe them is evil, then surely that's also satanic. The human terminology will instantly jump to evil. I mean, it's like there's so many television series that will Britain's Most Evil Killers, and all these serial killer documentaries, and it's evil. There's no word or mention of satanic. It's always the use of the word evil.
Yeah, and it wasn't something that they bring up in the Satanic Panic sort of analysis. Is that you might remember Charles Charles Manson was like a real cult. He was a real leader of a real cult that did actually murder people in the 60s. So this idea that people had about cults and murder and criminal, these evil cults, they really did exist. They really did kill people. It's not as ridiculous as it might sound. Obviously, we know now that it was massively overblown, but the fear is very much real. We have another super chat from the English Loyalist. Thank you very much. Hope you had a happy new year, English Loyalist. For $10, if you want something truly satanic, experience a skinwalker, and then you'll be freaked out. From a silly panic to something stalking you and outside your window, it's a big difference. But it sounds like the English Loyalist may have been experiencing a real life boogin or ghost. So I'm sorry if that happened to you.
Don't bring that over here. I mean, I'm sat in front of two windows that are very, very small cottage windows. They don't have any curtains in front of them, and it's pitch black outside. So
I'm a very easily spooked out person, but something I did want to bring.
Very windy outside, so curtains are quite literally twitching in the house because it's that windy at the moment. So
wow, that's a drafty window.
It's not even the window; it's the vent and the walls. It is that windy.
Spock on the original series, Star Trek, was called Satanic because of his ears. Apparently, says DRT. So it's like an epidemic of people just pointing at everything and calling it satanic.
I would say that Spock's ears were more elfish than satanic because they're quite pointy. There's a nicer way of looking at it.
Yeah,
instead of calling Spock Satan.
Again from Matty Ice for $10. Evil is evil. Satanic to me means the inversion of a proper moral system. Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up. Pursuing a family is sexist. Valuing your own power above all. Regarding empowerment. Making ugly art to challenge beauty, etc. Yeah, so this idea that even if people don't identify as being like worshipping Satan or being Satanists, the way that they invert moral systems is kind of satanic because it inverts the what we might call the natural order of things. And I did have this thought thinking about heavy metal and goths and emos. I definitely fell in with that crowd for a while when I was at school, and the goths that I was the goths that I was friends with, they're all such sweet, loving people. They weren't evil at all. They liked that kind of music and they liked to dress like a certain way. And they were really welcoming to me, even though I was like a nerd and an outsider. And I didn't really dress like a goth, but they never called me a poser or anything. They were just happy to hang out with me. It was really nice of them. They're just good people. But I think there is something. There's something about piercings and tattoos, and instead of making yourself look beautiful, you're emulating that kind of ugliness in the way that last super chats.
You know why I'm laughing. This is another dig. We started off the new year. This is strike number 2 aimed at Birdie.
I know that you have tattoos, Birdie. You're a very beautiful woman. You the way that you dress now. I don't know what you like as a goth or anything, or why you've got tattoos, but you must know what I mean. The way that some piercings and tattoos and certain fashion choices, they seem to be just thrown in the face of just the very concept of beauty.
As an example of this, myself and Alex were down our previous local with some friends, and one of our friends invited their friend along, and it was a girl I went to school with. Actually, she was probably about 5 years below me, so it was kind of weird seeing her now anyway, but I had to double take because there was so much metal on her face that I was just like, how do you even talk with that? And you could literally hear it clicking against her teeth, and she had a lisp and she couldn't even speak properly. She had a chipped tooth, and I thought, why? It looks horrible. I don't know what possessed her to do it, because she's one of these she doesn't wear any makeup, nothing like that, so she is a naturally pretty girl, but unfortunately she decided to shave half of her hair off and had it very short, and the funniest part of this was that she's a straight woman. She is not a lesbian. She is not. She's a straight woman, and she had very, very short hair and covered in piercings. And I did not understand it. I mean, as you just said, I have piercings, on my ears. I don't have many anywhere else, but there is a placement for it. Just I don't get the whole goth thing of let's cover myself in metal. I mean,
it does.
it makes it's a whole different meaning to metalhead. It really is.
Yeah, well, I think it's. I don't want to, psychologize or diagnose anyone with anything, but at a certain point, it does seem to be some sort of twisted, like, self-harm ritual where people, they've given up on looking beautiful. Like, they don't want anyone to see them as like a, classical beauty, or to even, like, they don't want to aspire to that, or to be seen to be aspiring to standard beauty. It's like they've gone like a completely left-hand direction.
It's almost a way of hiding themselves. They're hiding behind something else. It's like I wouldn't be able to go out. This is in that phase. I couldn't leave the house without a full face of makeup on. So if my mum asked me to go and get some milk down the shop, it would take me like half an hour, because I'd have to go and put a full face of makeup on. Now I don't give a toss. I walk out in my slippers if I have to. But it is a weird sort of, because I saw it as myself as literally hiding. So instead of being who I actually am, I was hiding behind this visage of makeup and piercings and ridiculous earrings, and I think that's what they're doing is just hiding. They're not actually being themselves, even though they might go, oh, this is me, I'm being myself. Okay, so why are you hiding? Because that's all I see is them hiding.
It's like you're like aggressively trying to form your own identity by rebelling against what people tell you to be. You're aggressively asserting, no, I'm not going to be the thing you want me to be. I'm this. Like, this is so far out of what the expectations for me are that this must be a true manifestation of my real personality. I mean, the actual truth is the opposite.
There has to be some sort of mental click in that, because there are like several like online communities that I have discovered over the years as a former emo scene kid, of extreme body modification, and how people just will treat that as a hobby. Like, if they're bored, they'll just go get a piercing, or they will do research on what they can do to make their ears shaped like elves, or to stretch their gauges, or different sorts of implants or modification. And
I feel like it's a mental breakdown thing. It's literally the meme of, oh, I'm having a breakdown, so I'm going to go and dye my hair.
It's just to a different sort of level. I don't want to call it an extreme, but when you are,
I think it can be. No, I think an extreme can be used, because it can go to the extreme.
Well, I would say that possibly, but it's largely due to the crowd that one feels accepted in. So if you have a bunch of friends who are doing the same thing, who are interested in the same thing, who are doing the same things on the internet, who dress the same way in person, then you're probably going to follow along with that. And I mean, I've met like several people who are like this, and they're fine people, like regular individuals. They just look really strange. And some of them will sort of go deeply into it about how, this is sort of my hobby to sort of trigger society, because I have the freedom to do what I please with my body, and no one can tell me not to. And then there's the other people that just sort of approach it like, I just did it because I felt like it, because it was fun. So I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it has got a lot to do with the people you're around. Like, as you say, Cows, I completely agree with you. Because again, when I went through my stage, the emo stage, I was with friends who would dress certain ways. They would dye their hair. Some reason I never dyed my hair, and I'm still amazed to this day why I didn't, or it just never happened. So I am actually amazed by that. But once I kind of not left that group, I still talk to a couple of them now, but even then, only one of them is still kind of dressing that way, and he'll dye his hair, and he'll still do that whole emo phase thing now into his mid to upwards 20s. And I still find it a bit odd because everybody kind of goes out of that group. Do you ever see a goth or an emo on their own? Because I've never seen one on their own. They're always in a group.
I see plenty of them. Especially
is that in America or is that?
I was gonna say, especially more so when I'm in Europe, but I have seen like a goth girl at the thrift store or the supermarket, and I mean, obviously, when you are not within your group, you sort of have less pressure to dress up in the way that you might normally do if you're surrounded by people who are like you.
Yeah.
But I can definitely tell that it's definitely like goth adjacent or sort of like alt adjacent. Just like boots, black, chains. Maybe they have like a few piercings. Maybe their hair is cut in a certain way. I mean, yeah, I've seen plenty of people just like walking around like that.
Yeah, I feel like the ones who are kind of the Lone Rangers, as I'm going to call them now, I feel like they're one, nicer, and two, they're more themselves, if that makes sense, because they're not, as you just said, Kals, they're not following in the footsteps of their peers. They are just doing it because they want to. It's not because everyone else around them is doing it. They're not in that group. They just want to do it. So that to me says that that's, they are doing it for their own sake and not for anybody else's.
Well, this can definitely be said in several different aspects, not just the aesthetic in one that one chooses to dress when they're with their friends or alone. It could be said for several parts of society that there's power in numbers, and people will act very differently towards people they deem as outsiders of their own sort of aesthetic or culture, that kind of thing, when they are by themselves rather than when they are surrounded by people who are like them. I mean, you can see it with race, you can see it with gender, you can see it with politics. If you put, like one left-wing person in a room with a bunch of right-wingers, they will act a lot differently versus if it was a group of left-wingers versus a group of right-wingers. And I feel like that's very true with like aesthetics. If you're dressing this sort of like strange way on your own, obviously, you're kind of gonna get looked at as like the odd one out. You just accept it, rather than when you're surrounded by your own kin, you just act differently.
I think it's about fitting in, to put it in the most basic terms. Like it's not just with, it's with anything. The way that if you go to an anime convention or you get furries in that sort of space as well. People who they're dressing in like extremely strange manner, or they're even acting in an extremely strange manner because these things, instead of signaling in the normal world, these things are really strange and odd, and people will won't want to stand next to you in a lift. People will like try to get away from you if you start acting that strangely in most of your life. But then once you throw them in with a bunch of other people, those very same features and those very same choices become like a signal of like allegiance to the group almost. And I think that's what's happening in even these pride parades and things, where you get this extreme manifestation of this like very sexualized, like fetishized attire and behavior, where this is now it was what they call like a costly signal. Like you're signaling to others in the group that you're really dedicated to this hobby or this way of life, because it's it's so hideous to the rest of society that you really must be very invested if this is how you're acting. It becomes like a way of fitting in.
One Steven Universe fan acts a lot differently than a group of Steven Universe fans.
I am a Steven Universe. Have you talked about Steven Universe, Kals?
Have we? I don't know.
I can't remember. I really like that show, but sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who likes the show who's not like a complete Tumblr head like SJW.
Oh Lord, future topic maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Oh, I should say I really like the first season of that show.
All right.
And for another time, definitely. Yeah, and you do get Steven Universe fans at anime conventions, definitely.
And Pride parades.
My days of anime conventions are long behind me, but I did go to one a few years ago, probably for the last time, I think. Something that you brought up earlier, Birdie, made me think about that TV show Cobra Kai. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh.
I've heard of it, have not seen it.
Oh, there's a character in Cobra Kai. He's like a nerdy, dweeby kid who's getting bullied because he has like a cleft palate, I think. You know, that he's got a lip that's deformed. And I think everyone calls him Lip, like they're all making fun of him. Like he's a really shy kid, like really self-conscious about it. Like he's always trying to make himself look as small and inconspicuous as possible because he doesn't want anyone to look at his lip. And within the first episode or a couple of episodes, the karate teacher, who's the main character of Cobra Kai, he basically says there's no way to hide this. Like you have a deformed lip. People are going to make fun of it. And you're just gonna have to be tough and put up with it. And the best thing you can do is to dye your hair or to give yourself another physical characteristic that's way more noticeable than a deformed lip. Like get a piercing or a tattoo or something. And that character, he does exactly that. Like he actually takes the advice. He shaves his hair into like a mohawk, and the character's name becomes Hawk for the rest of the TV show because he takes on this persona where he just decides one day, like, I'm not going to be bullied anymore. I'm not going to be the guy with a deformed lip. I'm going to be the guy who has a mohawk, and everyone's going to call me Hawk. I don't know how realistic it is, but that's kind of what...
I don't know if that's good advice or bad.
Well, the main character in Cobra Kai is like
a big change to yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, all that was screaming in my head was, oh, he has a really nice personality. People do not see that. That is all I could see. That's all that my head was screaming. So I just thought, okay, so this guy's being bullied, but he's been told to basically make people look at him in a different way. But there are different ways of doing that, including, talking to people and actually using your personality as your main character trait, not I'm going to give myself a mohawk. Obviously it worked, but I'm not sure if it would work in real life, is what I'm saying.
The morality of Cobra Kai is a bit complicated. Obviously it's not realistic. It's a show about karate, so it's not... it's kind of morally kind of grey because the main character is he's like an anti-hero. He's the villain from the Karate Kid, the TV show, the film from the 80s. You could say that Cobra Kai is kind of satanic because it takes this villain who's a bully in the 80s movie, and it makes him the protagonist of this new TV show where he starts his own karate school and he teaches kids to not get pushed around anymore, to be way more assertive in this generation snowflake. There's a few episodes that really seem like he's almost like he's standing up to woke morality in a way. He's this unlikely hero. I don't know if it's worth doing an analysis because it's a very dumb show. It feels like they were playing with a few things they didn't really know how to address properly. So he could be seen as this beacon of masculinity in an age where masculinity is toxic. He's teaching young men how to properly assert themselves and be dangerous. But many of his students end up being bullies, basically, which isn't surprising because he was a bully. But they do end up being bullies, including this this Hawk kid who was bullied himself. Really, I've spent too long talking about this already. We've got a super chat from Mr. 43. You should chat with Jay Dyer. I'll have to look up who that is. But thank you for your super chat and a good chat. He says, or she. I mean, Mr. kind of implies it's a man. I can't believe we talked about this for almost an hour when I really didn't even touch on what I wanted to say. Because I wanted to talk about this word demonic as well. I don't know if any of you saw Dr. Jordan Peterson on Twitter recently going after internet anonymity. And as you can see from the panel, this is not... we probably wouldn't agree with his statements about it.
No.
This is something that's got him... Jordan Peterson's popularity has already been like declining recently since he's come back from his illness and he's joined up with the Daily Wire. He's made a lot of decisions that have like set him apart from kind of his previous self in his heyday, and just one of these things is his stance against internet anonymity. And he, at one point, I was trying to find the tweet, but I don't think I have. But if anyone who's a fan of Jordan Peterson, please tell me if I'm incorrectly attributing positions to him that he doesn't hold. But he described the way that anonymous internet mobs can go after people, whether it's woke or any other group or point on the political spectrum. The way that they can anonymously just ambush people and not just send messages, but also sort of organize a hate campaign against someone or their employer. This cancel culture. That's what we used to call it back in 2017 when I started doing YouTube. He believes that these internet mobs, even though they're composed of real people with real lives and who may not even be that immoral by themselves, he described it as he called it a demonic force. The way that the thing that all these people create together when they anonymously swarm against someone or against people they don't like, that being anonymous online kind of gives you a free pass to be unethical, to be mean to people, to do things that you would never do if your face and your name were attached to it. Not just because of trying to keep your job or literally trying to protect yourself from prison, but just because what? Because when you're face to face with someone in person, it just goes against human nature most of the time to be cruel to that person. Like, there's a cruelty that is enabled in anonymity, and I kind of see where he's coming from that perspective. But obviously, my anonymity is they call it profilicity. When you have an online profile, people can track who you are, and you have relationships over time. You're not completely anonymous like on 4chan, where one post cannot be attributed to any other post you've ever made. But on Twitter, you have like a profile, and you might have followers based on what the kinds of things you usually say and the jokes you usually make. I can't remember why I made that distinction, but the point is that I'm not completely anonymous, but if I let my identity get out, it might be troublesome for me and my family and my income. So that's obviously important to me to continue doing my channel. And lots of people have pointed this out to Jordan Peterson as well. But yeah, that's definitely for people who go against the mainstream, whose viewpoints and what we have to say, even though we're not, I really don't endorse any kind of hatred on Women's Hour or on my channel or on my Twitter. I don't like cruelty or or mobs, or even anyone just being excessively mean-spirited. It doesn't it doesn't sit well with me at all. I don't like to be friends with people who are like that. Even so, just because of the things that I believe, the things that I like to talk about, it could be a threat to my to my income and to my family if my company found out about it, just because there's a prevailing moral code that most mainstream people have to either prescribe to or pretend to prescribe to, and I don't fit into that. I think everyone watching this understands what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there is I don't want to say respect, but it is a level of respect in terms of, there are certain people we trust on the internet. There are certain people that we don't. Even, panelists, obviously ladies, we have a certain level of trust within each other. But I would certainly not trust a lot of people who watch and listen to the stream. And again, for very similar reasons to yourself, but I do think a lot of the sort of hate and comments and downright nonsense that gets thrown in people's directions is down to the classic, oh, you don't know me nonsense, and people just jumping to a conclusion in terms of they hear a single comment and they'll go, oh, well, they've said that, so, and then just coming to some random conclusion, regardless of the backstory, the facts, etc., etc. Now, what I will say is that it is very important for those listening to understand that there are certain things that speakers won't say for obvious reasons, but those who are listening need to understand that there probably is a backstory to what they're saying. We speak for a reason, we have opinions for a reason, and that is fine. They don't necessarily need to know the reason behind those opinions. Everyone has opinions. If you don't like them, fine. You don't need to say anything otherwise. But this goes for Jordan Peterson as well. A lot of conclusions were being jumped to, I think, in terms of the whole conversation. Well, they weren't even conversations, they were just spats, really. There wasn't a lot of there wasn't even debating going on or conversations. It was just throwing things back and forth, which I think you ladies will agree with. It got to a point where it was silly and people were just looking at it thinking, what are you doing? It's
in internet terms, it's called dunking, when you're instead of trying to have a debate or trying to change minds, you're basically just trying to score points and get likes on your witty retort.
Ratio. Yeah, yes. I was gonna say, I will use this word, even though it's kind of a little bit of a spicy word on this side of things. But I honestly feel like Jordan Peterson comes from a point of privilege by having this rationale in his head that, oh, why would you say things on the internet that you wouldn't say in real life? And because over the years, his entire career has been built off of him saying things that he believes. And that's just not the case for most people. That if you described every possible thing ever that you have an interest in, that you like, that you dislike, if you said that to your employer or maybe your family, people that you're close with for other reasons, that could be extremely detrimental. And I feel like a lot of these sort of online figures, especially Peterson, who are pushing for this sort of no anon sort of thing, they need to put themselves back in the headspace of, where was I when I was not this, when I wasn't an internet commentator full time. If I had imagine going into a job interview and walking in and saying, I don't know what Jordan Peterson says. The first thing I thought of was, that's the real rat. But yeah, I don't know. It's very upsetting to me that because there are so many even like normie conservative people who at least understand this basic notion that even just like the regular sort of like normie like neolibs or Republicans probably can't get away with saying what they believe at work, even if it's just like, oh, I don't want to abort my child or something like that.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for it, and I do think in terms of, if you're going to say it on the internet, especially if you're going to say something horrible or nasty, specifically directed at someone, be prepared that if we meet you in person, I want you to say that to my face. Because I know full well that they're probably not going to. And that's what I always remember. And I did actually have two people who I bumped into at the recent event, last year, who had said things to me on Twitter. And they were very, very polite and very calm in person. And I just thought, yeah, you're so full of, And I just thought, really, don't sit on the internet, because if you're going to say something on the internet, be aware that people can find it, that people can get hold of it if they really want to, which, I haven't got a problem with that personally. But just if you're going to say it, at least have the guts to say it in person as well as online. It's that whole hiding behind a computer screen. It's not going to protect you forever. As in Jordan Peterson's case, it has not protected him now.
I think that there was a justification for calling that spirit of cruelty that manifests so often on Twitter and other online platforms. In the comment section of Women's Hour, for instance, occasionally, that we don't get it really badly. I'm not trying to paint ourselves as victims. It's just a level of conversation that you would never see in real life, because there's absolutely no cost to it socially, and you can. By being snarky and being a bit witty about it, you can win favor with other anonymous profiles, and they'll laugh at your jokes, and there's some camaraderie in that. And I do, I feel it. It's almost like let me rewind, because in the Bible, for instance, there'll be descriptions of people who are possessed by a demon, and what a lot of sort of modern analysts of these stories might say is that these were descriptions of people who had schizophrenia or dementia or some extreme mental disturbance that was making them appear possessed. People who didn't have the language for those kind of mental illnesses, they would say this person is possessed by a demon. And we understand that. You can understand how you'd make that assumption with an extreme mental illness like that. And for anyone who's known or loved someone with that kind of mental, to see someone that no longer inhabit themselves is quite disturbing. It's very upsetting, of course, but it is very strange. You get this mythology about skinwalkers and the wearing the skin suit, these body snatchers. This idea of the person they look like them and they're walking around and they're claiming to be the person that but they no longer are being themselves. They're inhabited by it is as if you're interacting with something else that has inhabited them. So this idea of like a spirit that's now possessed them, you can understand how that comes about without the sort of scientific analysis. But so that's one sense of the word demonic, where it's just a simple religious word for a phenomenon that we now understand better. But it's not just like that word no longer applies, because it kind of, just like with the word satanic and the word evil, like we were saying earlier, it does still speak to the experience of that sort of uncanniness and the sense that there really is something. You're talking to someone that's not the person there's something else there other than them, and even if it's not a literal entity, like a sentient entity that's inhabited them, it's like they've been possessed, if that makes sense. And the same thing happens to a lesser extent when you're having a conversation with someone who you know well, and then they just start talking about whatever random ideology they've picked up that week from the internet. Insert whatever left wing, right wing, whatever, like this new thing. Like, you're no longer able to talk to them because they're just going off on one about some conspiracy theory or some like wholesale package of thoughts that they've just downloaded into their brain. We talk about the NPC programming, and it's whether it's the mainstream beliefs that everyone is parroting, or if it's just some random niche conspiracy theory. There's that sensation of talking to someone and feeling like you're not really talking to them, you're just hearing them reading out the most intelligent thing they've read online recently that they've just memorized and they're saying back to you. And that is a kind of possession as well. That is a kind of, you could call that a demonic possession, when that same ideology or that same worldview inhabits many thousands of people. That is a kind of demonic force that has entered the world in a sense, in a very minor way.
I think get behind that, because a lot of the time, a lot of what these people are saying, that in your words that it's just unlike themselves or unlike a human, it very negatively impacts the person who is acting in this way or holding these beliefs. and they just can't see it from their perspective. It can only really be seen from an outsider. And I'll use an example. I had a friend who was like installing windows in a house, and it was one of his neighbors actually commissioned him to install windows, and it was like early 2021. And I live in New England. It's snowy. It's very cold. And it was this neighbor who just kind of called him up and said, "Hey, I want my windows to be done." And it was someone that like he used to say hi when he was getting his mail. And he walks into her house just like expecting to, you know, like get an estimate, and this woman just like has these eyes of horror when she opens the door and he's not wearing a mask. And she went and ran and opened all the doors and opened all the windows. Meanwhile, this is like January or February, and in the middle of winter, this old frail woman just like frantically opening all these things because she doesn't want this polluted air of an unmasked individual in her house. And it's just, that's just so self-destructive in a way that I don't feel like that woman could comprehend. It's just what she saw as the logical thing to do in that instance. And that's very scary. And I've had several instances like that. Other people have had several instances like that with the recent Koof phenomenon, and in other sort of things that have been happening in society recently.
Yeah, someone brought up, someone just said humongous in the chat, and it does remind me back to that. Do you remember the humongous? Humongous what?
Humongous what? Yeah.
do you see this, Birdie?
Probably not. No, I mean,
it was like ancient in internet terms, but there was a some sort of local meeting for some decision that had to be made by the locals. They were voting on it, and this guy gave a short speech about a personal experience he'd been with his daughter, and it was like a pro-police thing. I'm really going into too much detail about this, but anyway, there was a woman in the audience who didn't like him, and she went up to him with a camera at the end. She's filming this. This is the video you get that went like viral. She was filming it. This was so crazy. She filmed this guy, and she's just going up to him really like quite aggressively, like asking him what his name is. And instead of saying his name, he says, "I'm humongous." Like he's like quite a fat, like big guy. So it's just funny. He keeps saying like, "I'm humongous," and she keeps saying, "What is your name? What is your name?" And she interprets this as a sexually suggestive remark. And she just like this guy like realizes his mistake. Like he was just trying to have like tease her a little bit, and like she's completely insane. Like she's not just a bit of an annoying woman, she's actually completely nuts. So she's following him around with her camera, and he's like realized his mistake and he's like leaving. He's trying to get away, and she's following him around filming him saying, "This man just sexually harassed me."
Yeah,
it's really like, she's really scary. Like she's like, have you ever seen someone who's possessed? Like seriously,
she's a bit of a Karen. I feel
we don't use the word. We don't use that slur on this show.
That woman with that haircut who's asking for the manager.
Yeah, this woman was called
definitely possessed.
Yeah. Well, the way that she was emboldened by the people standing by, who like the people who she was saying, "This man sexually harassed me," like they hadn't seen what had happened, so they basically took her side. It's like really quite an alarming situation. But because she filmed it, she thought that she was correct, and she uploaded it. This thing went viral, and everyone thought it was hilarious. This guy, this big fat guy, saying, "I'm humongous."
Yeah.
She's like, like talk about don't flatter yourself, honey. Like he's just making a joke about being fat.
Yeah.
Humongous what? Humongous what? You're saying you're humongous.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's the possession. I think I think people get it, and to come back to what Jordan Peterson said, there's, I think he did have a good reason for using that word, even though I disagree with the actual point he was making. I I do see it as a problem. The fact that people can just be needlessly cruel for the sake of getting likes and getting kudos from their buddies online. The problem is, that's what I wanted to make the stream about. The problem is when you say satanic or demonic or like demonic possession, you just sound like a right-wing, like Christian fundamentalist kook. Like you sound like you're actually like an Alex Jones, like ranting and raving. Like, oh, like you're an insane person. Like you're not just. This is really not a sensible centrish thing to say. As I don't know how many people are watching this familiar, but I'm quite on board with this idea that we should be, instead of portraying ourselves as like a cutting edge movement of radicals, that we should just be presenting our opinions as sensible suggestions for the rationally thinking person. We're not suggesting anything radical or extreme. We're just suggesting sensible policies that were the norm, going back not even that far. So I'm on board with this, and although I do like to use the word satanic and demonic among friends, I think it's not good optics, because you just sound like you think that the whole world is run by a satanic cult of demons. We've got another super chat. While you two ladies think about any closing thoughts for the stream. We've gone over an hour now. So I'll just read the super chat from Son of Hasta. Thank you very much. Happy New Year, Son of Hasta. For $10. Interesting chat. I'll have to go back and listen from the start. I've had some wild experiences with possession. I met up with an ex from almost a decade ago. She developed schizophrenia. Wild. Wow. Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear about that. That's very sad.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting twist on things, shall we say?
Yeah.
I don't know what you two think about the what your stance was on the sensible centrism debate, or if you weren't even part of that, or if you had any more thoughts about satanic panic before we close the show.
No, I think it was a lot to do with the whole thing links in with people sitting on Twitter and screaming things for no reason. Satanic panic is literally, from the grasps of it, what sparked off as a story became rumors, became people adding more and more to this, what became big story, which turns out wasn't actually as big as it was advertised as. And it's amazing what you can do with just little snippets of things here and there and feeding it to the right audience. And people do end up acting like sheep. That's just the way that humanity is. They will just follow the leader. So if they're saying that that's true, then people who agree with that person are going to join in, and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's something that we're never going to get rid of, I don't think, as society. Oh, you've missed 2 super chats.
Yeah, apparently. I'm going back. I'm going to find them.
Where are they? We're going to have to keep going now until we find the.
Here we go. It's we got one from Matty Ice. The default villainization of low-class Christians who were called bigots for undershot predictions of cultural decay and entropy is incredible. Drill rap productive, youth friend groups transition. I think I get what that means. Super chats are funny because they make you pay when you go over a certain number of words. You have to pay more, so you often get these like truncated, random like spatterings of thoughts for people who want to get as much. No shame on you, Matty, guys. Thanks for your super chat. I do appreciate it. I appreciate the grift of trying to fit as many thoughts into this super chat as possible. Drill rap. I don't know what drill rap is, but I think youth friends transition sounds like the Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage, where she documents the social contagion nature of gender transition among teenagers. And I mean, how can you like looking at where we are now in terms of cultural and moral decay? I don't think we can say that the Christians were wrong, even if there aren't literal satanic rituals with drinking blood going on. The way that people act and what has been revealed about Jeffrey Epstein's island and everything going on with what these super rich people actually get up to, like how like the reality is not very far from the deranged ramblings of these low class Christians, as Matthias puts it. These people who are were concerned about moral decay because they thought they believed that it would lead to these immoral actions and a decline in moral standards. They have been completely vindicated, in my opinion. Mary Whitehouse was right, dare I say. I don't mean that literally. I'm just making a reference back to an old episode we did with Amy. Is this the one I missed? From Sabine Wren. Yeah, no problem about being poor, Sabine. No, no judgment here. Anything that you can send is appreciated. Please send your money if you feel you need to. You don't have to send super chats. Just send me a DM on Twitter and I'll address it in the next one. Steven Universe would be interesting to cover. The thinking cultural left embodied. I still like it though. Exactly. Yeah, I feel like I can really get behind some of the catchy songs and the storylines that I like while being aware of the cultural leftist influence. Kind of like the stream I did recently with Farah about Frozen. I'm so hyper aware of the propaganda that I can just compartmentalize it away, and I can enjoy the artistic vehicle that brings the propaganda along. I believe those are the two I missed, and see if we got any more. It's been a very profitable stream. Thank you so much for everyone who's super chatted, and again, happy New Year to everyone watching.
Before we run off and I completely forget, I have had permission from Poe to shill this.
Oh, please do, yes.
So our friend Nathan Hood has a stream next week, Tuesday the 10th of January from 7 until 9 p.m. over on his channel. I will put the link up on my Twitter if people don't follow Nathan. If you don't, go and follow him. Follow me too if you don't already. Sneak that in there. I'm on it. My now fiance, that's weird. Fiance is on it. Alex, that's Steam Guy on Twitter, and lovely Mark as well. Not so obvious is on as well. We'll be talking about the need to be in real life and being local, how to do it, how important it is. Things that were obviously very, very. My brain has stopped working. It's
important. It's all
important. Thank you, Poe. Things that we find very, very important in our daily lives and obviously what we do in general. So please do come along and listen to that on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think just literally going outside and being real in the real world with not just meetups online, but just getting into your local community is so much of what we're missing in the modern world.
Definitely. Just being in the real world in general actually has a massive impact on your daily life. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that in depth on Nathan Hood's channel.
All right. Well, the baby has started crying, so she's very much requesting for the live stream to end. So I better end it before we get any super chats, or we'll have to. My baby will have to suffer for the greed of my my New Year's resolution. Thank you so much for everyone watching and for my guests. We didn't even get around to talking about how maths is going to be compulsory up to the age of 18.
But, I was very excited for that. Hopefully
I appreciate that you were here for it.
Yeah, hopefully we can push that to next week because
okay, why not?
We'll throw it in next week's.
I don't know if there's going to be a stream next week or not because I'm just coming back from holiday next Friday. I'm only driving home, but I don't have very far to come, so I think I'll be here way before 9. So it's just a question of trying to prepare for the stream. But if we're just going to talk about maths, then let's do it. I'm prepared. I'm excited already. Join us next week to talk about maths education. It's going to be wild. No, seriously, it's going to be a great talk.
It'll be fun.
Have a good night, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Good night.